Today we're going to talk about our 2's multiplication facts. Alright, let's skip count from 2 to 20. Ready? 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20. So, you have actually been multiplying for a long time now. All multiplication is repeated addition. That's it. So when you multiply, you are adding sets of the same number over and over again. We've done this on number lines. You can jump the same number every time so that you have even jumps on the number line, just like when you skip count. So let's go ahead and look at our multiplication facts from 2 times 1 to 2 times 12. Say it with me. 2 times 1 is 2. 2 times 2 is 4. 2 times 3 is 6. 2 times 4 is 8. 2 times 5 is 10. 2 times 6 is 12. 2 times 7 is 14. 2 times 8 is 16. 2 times 9 is 18. 2 times 10 is 20. 2 times 11 is 22. And 2 times 12 is 24. I need for you to notice a few things. First of all, let's look at 2 sets of 10. It's over in that right column. 2 sets of 10 equals 20. A lot of you have already done skip counting with tens, and we also talked about multiplying tens, but let's focus on 2 sets of 10. One way to say it is 2 times 10 equals 20. Another way to say it when you are multiplying by 2's would be to double the number 10. When you double the number 10, you have 20. So if I have 10 pencils in one hand and 10 pencils in another hand, I have 2 sets of 10 pencils. When I put those together, I have 20 altogether. So, you can multiply 2 times 10. It's also 2 sets of 10. You can also call it doubling 10. And finally, you can think about it as repeated addition. So, you can have 2 sets of 10, and if you look at it on a piece of paper, you could have 10 plus 10 equals 20. 10 plus 10 equals 20. Alright, let's go ahead and look at 2 specific arrays, specifically thinking about the commutative property. Do you have to remember that name right now? Definitely not, but we do have to remember the rule. 2 times 1 equals 2. Even though the arrays are going to be different, the answer will stay the same. You can also have 1 times 2 equals 2. So all we did was switch the numbers, but the answer stays the same. That is a rule with multiplication. So even if I had 100 times 5 or 5 times 100, it might make the arrays look a little bit different, but the answer will stay the same. Now let's look a little bit closer at these 2 arrays. 2 times 4 equals 8. I want you to pay close attention to the top row under 2 times 4 equals 8. The top row has 4, and the bottom row has 4. So we have 2 sets of 4. Now if you look over at 4 times 2 equals 8, the answer is still the same, but our rows will look a little different. So then we have 2 plus 2 more, plus 2 more, plus 2 more, and that still equals 8. In real life, this will really come into play, especially if you're doing seating arrangements or if you're trying to place things on a table to count them. You might do different rows or different columns depending on the size of the room. I used to teach in a much smaller room, and so I had to arrange the desks in a much different way because of the amount of space that I had. So I really had to think a lot about the arrays for the desks that I put in my room and how the students would learn best. And we do the same in our classroom with testing days and on learning days. We put our desks in different arrays. Alright, let's look at the standard form for multiplication. If you have 1 times 2 equals 2, and they're listed above each other, you still have to think about it in the same way. You're still thinking of 1 set of 2, and that equals 2. Or 5 sets of 2, which equals 10. But we are going to say this as 1 times 2 equals 2. 5 times 2 equals 10. 10 times 2 equals 20. 12 times 2 equals 24. And don't forget about those doubles. If you think, oh no, I can't do that. Yes, you can, because you can double 12, and you know it's 24. 6 times 2 equals, I want you to think about it. You're right, it equals 12. 7 times 2 equals, 14. 8 times 2 equals, don't forget about those doubles. 8 doubled is, 16. 9 times 2 equals, you got it, 18. 9 plus 9 equals 18. 9 doubled is 18, and 9 times 2 is 18. Alright, so let's look at a story problem. There are 19 students in Mrs. Claypool's homeroom class. How many shoes do the students have? What we're going to start doing with our story problems is we're going to look at first what is being asked. How many shoes do the students have? Then we're going to look at what the story problem gives us. We know that there are 19 students, each wearing a pair of shoes. Now, it doesn't say that exactly in the story problem, but that's the information that we're given. We're given that there are 19 students, and then we know that each student has a pair of shoes on. That does not count any days where somebody has taken their shoes off. We are assuming that all of the students have a pair of shoes on. Okay, now the most important thing that I need you to know is that you need to show your work. How did you find your answer? Okay, so let's look at that math sentence. We know that there are 19 students times 2 pairs of shoes for each student. If you get stuck in any problem with multiplication, please remember that when you switch them, you're still going to get the same answer. So 19 times 2, you could also think of it as 2 times 19 if you're only thinking about the math part and how to find the answer. So if you needed to do that, you could just show that you switched it around and that you did 2 times 19. But let's look at some of the other options under the column answer where I ask you to show your work. One of the options would be to draw an array and then you could count them. Another way to do that right now would be to use a number line. And then you use equal jumps on the number line, which means you don't jump from 1 to 4 and then to 18. Like, you would jump 2 pair of shoes for one student, then you jump to 4 because that was another student and their shoes, and then you jump to 6 because another student has on shoes, and you jump all the way up until you've jumped 19 times. Now, you wouldn't just jump to 19, okay? You'd have to jump 19 times, skipping 2 every time, okay? So don't get tricked up, and you might want to stop and try that and just see if you can figure it out, and then you can always bring it in and show me if you have any questions. The standard way to do it was on that previous slide where we just did 19 times 2. If multiplication's easy for you and you're good at this, then go ahead and do it that way. Finally, you can skip count you can skip count 19 times for 2. So that would be 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, and you'd count that 19 times. That is a little bit harder, trying to keep track of how many times, but you might use tally marks and do skip counting. If you did that on a test, you might do tally marks for each time you did skip counting, and you could just write, I used tally marks while I did skip counting. So there's all kinds of ways to show your work on a test.